¿Qué onda, lokos? Yo! So, have you guys seen that show, Channel Zero? It's on Shudder. I don't recommend Shudder, but if you do, get the 7-day free subscription and then bail. But season 1 is really cool. It's like Candle Cove. It's like puppets and stuff like that.
Come inside, buddy. All your secrets will be safe in Candle Cove.
I was just watching it, and I was watching season 4, and there was like this contortionist clown. I thought I had recognized him from somewhere, and it turns out he's the ragdoll from the Flash show. I especially like the bone crunching sound effects. And he had the same mannerisms as Gary Busey. Or maybe he just kind of looked like Gary Busey. I don't know. It was very weird. My favorite Gary Busey acting by far is in Gingerdead Man. That Gary Busey was the best Gary Busey has ever Gary Busey'd.
Fuck off!
Well, today's Monday again, so you know, Mexican Movie Monday. Today's movie we're going to be talking about is called Ana y Bruno. Ana y Bruno is like an animated film that I found on YouTube, and that's won a Silver Ariel Award in Mexico for Best Feature-Length Animated Film. I don't know whether you can consider it a child film.
Suéltame o te desaparezco, te desaparezco.
It does have a lot of adult themes in it, but if you've seen like a lot of telenovelas and Mexican TV your whole life, this stuff's pretty harmless then. The movie had graphics that look similar to Dreamcast or Xbox One. And by Xbox One, I mean the first Xbox, not Xbox One, the new one. The graphics of the movie look like Psychonauts, if you remember that game.
Looks like a test.
At first, I didn't like it very much, but it kind of grew on me after a while. And watching this made me realize just how much money is invested in American animated films, you know? Even Illumination. Let's take a movie like Ugly Dolls, right? Ugly Dolls spent $45 million to make. Compare that to Ana y Bruno, which was considered Mexico's most expensive animated film production, which is at $8 million. Okay, let's just consider that garbage of Ugly Dolls versus something like Ana y Bruno with a good storyline and decent graphics. Even more so, let's compare it to some big names. So Beauty and the Beast, the crappy one, you know, the new one, $160 million. Also came out in 2017. Two other movies that came out in 2017 were Cars 3 and Coco. I'm not a huge fan of Coco, so I don't know. Maybe it's like Mexican-American or American-Mexican and versus Mexican-American. I don't know. But I'm just not a fan of Coco. But both of those movies spent $170 million to make. $175 million to be specific. And even a year before, in 2016, Zootopia was $160 million. And you remember that gross Jungle Book movie? $175 million. What am I to say? Well, all I gotta say is Ana y Bruno is definitely a film you gotta watch. It has a sort of characteristic elements of films that are more adult in nature in America. I think oftentimes when you watch like a Disney Pixar film or a DreamWorks film, let's kick DreamWorks out of it. When you watch a Disney Pixar film, there's like 1 or 2 parts that are adult theme based. So we get like in Zootopia, there's that part where the fox, his character, I forget his name, he gets bullied. And so it's like the adult's perspective of bullied as the adult. So seeing it back, right? Same thing in Up, we get this idea of like when he loses his wife, it's reminiscent of growing up. So like if you saw your grandparents, one of them pass away, okay, whatever. But something like Ana y Bruno sticks to this adult theme constantly. So that's also why I would recommend watching it independently before you kind of get an assessment as to whether or not it's for kids. There's like a drunkard in it and he's harmless really. There's not too much weirdness. And it's not like Conker's Bad Fur Day or something. Oh. But it is kind of strange. So that being said, I think You'll have to see some clips of it in order to get a better assessment. So let's get down to watching it and analyzing some of the parts. Ana y Bruno begins with what seems like the middle of a conversation between mother and child. The child in this case is Ana, and we see a silent, lethargic, somewhat melancholic father. When you're watching this movie, you automatically feel that you understand the film by noticing the connotative elements of the building that match an asylum. I think we've recently become fascinated with insane asylums, so it's a lot easier to identify them. The father leaves the mother and child, and Ana meets the dog that she calls Choco. The next day, Ana and her mom hang out with more Xbox graphics, and we are introduced to a man that claims that his puppet is alive. We also then see that the puppet is acting by itself, but instead of him scaring Ana, he seems fearful of the third floor. The clown then disappears as we hear the sounds of the old man that was handling him earlier get shocked. Ana then goes to the third floor and finds Bruno,
¿Qué haces acá arriba?
alongside with a bunch of other weird characters. An elephant,
Rosy, Ana, Rosy, al revés.
a robot,
Apúrense, se les hace tarde.
a toilet that talks with burps, a hand, and some of the other imaginary friends that the patients of the hospital created to help them cope. Bruno then quickly explains to Ana why the people create those specific imaginary characters.
Por ejemplo, salió de la cabeza del huésped de allá adentro. De niño se hacía pipí en la cama y sus papás le pegaban por eso. La amiga de Tika es compulsiva de la puntualidad. Para fugarse juntos como habían acordado. ¿Te paquidermo? Es producto de la imaginación de una neurótica con fiesta lampanuda. Bueno, mejor no te digo con qué se traumó su...
Then the funeral of Giggles is shown. Here we're also introduced to the drunkard, who's probably my favorite character in this movie,
Vine a servirme un café.
and a fire monster shows up. The nurses then lock up Ana's mom since she claims she saw a monster where there was no sign of one.
Va a haber que cambiarla de piso.
The monster chases after Ana. Ana runs away with all the imaginary friends, and they get on a train to go get her dad. Ana then meets Daniel at a train station, and he's a little blind boy who claims he can drive them to San Marcos. Once Ana finally finds her dad, she thinks he's moved on with his life and found a new family.
¿Ya encontraste a tu papá? Mi papá ya se olvidó de nosotras.
At the asylum, though, the people have stopped seeing their imaginary friends, and they look to entirely have gotten all better. At the halfway mark, the pieces all finally come together, and you see that the dad is putting flowers in a burnt down house, and that he can't see Ana because Ana died. From here, we can speculate whether the fire monster is the guilt Ana's mom feels for letting the house burn down, or if the fire monster is actually a reference to the possibility of Ana's mom as the cause of the arson. Ana then tries to contact her dad and tries to get him to go to the asylum.
Papá, despierta. Hay que ayudar a mamá.
To no avail. Ana and Daniel head on a motorcycle to the asylum. They separate, and Daniel meets up with Ana's dad and makes him go visit Ana's mom. Ana's mom is all then prepped for ECT as the dad shows up to stop the process. The doctor then straps both of them up, and the imaginary characters show up to scare the patients.
Óyeme bien, Borate. En todas estas noches de insomnio, entre las paredes acolchonadas de esta clínica, ¿quién ha sido el único que no te ha abandonado?
Ana then releases her mom and dad, but realizes she must kill the fire monster.
Me tengo que ir.
And in order to kill the fire monster, she needs to be the balance of good and evil. So she needs to destroy the monster, and in so doing, destroy herself. So she sacrifices herself in order to stop the fire monster. So the mom finally comes to terms with the loss of her daughter. At the end of the movie, we see that Ana's mom and dad have adopted Daniel, and Ana is still running around the house. I presume it's the fact that the mom still hallucinates Ana. A very peaceful ending to a hard loss.
Yo también te quiero, Ana.
Bueno, we just saw Ana y Bruno. I hope you liked this movie. I personally loved it. And I hate bad graphics, to be honest with you. A lot of the reviews said that the graphics were horrible. I'm like, dude, it's $8 million versus $170 million. Have you guys seen the credits to the Avengers? I mean, that thing's like a mile long. I mean, just listen to this.
Hollywood now employs more people than the federal government.
Truth. Just truth right there. I don't know. I don't know if you can really compare it to American films, but there is a sense of urgency that Ana y Bruno provides. This whole descriptive idea of like schizophrenia. And I think it's assisted with the complex nature of ECT that people were using electroconvulsive therapy. They're even using it now to like a certain extent. But I think it's good to see a film that kind of displays this in a cartoonic manner. And currently I'm actually reading Madness and Civilization by Foucault. So it's cool to see that idea of where madness derived from and kind of like the descriptive indicator of like where madness is on a barometer, right? So it used to be the case that leprosy kind of caused madness. So they had the manifestation of leprosy to resemble madness. We needed a new scapegoat. So we created this idea of these people who see another world instead of no world. Let us consider people who were shamans, right? Or people who were considered to be connected to God. We now consider that sort of thing like temporal lobe epilepsy. Looking back on it, I like the fact that they used imaginary characters as the comforting characters to everyone. The only one I didn't like was that weird puppet. Oh, I don't like puppets. And I think that's why I wanted to mention that Channel Zero stuff first, because I saw the season 1 of Channel Zero, the Candle Cove one, and there's these ugly, ugly skull puppets. You gotta love it. Otra vez. My name is Mexican Chuy, and hasta mañana, locos.
¡Cállate, perro! ¡Que te calles, te digo!